Hey everybody, this is Mary Grothy, and you're tuning in to my podcast, Destination Remarkable, the show where I chat about my journey through life from childhood to founding 3 companies to my venture launching 2 books with Forbes. Every week, I'll dive in and unveil the highs, the lows, and even the nitty-gritty details of my journey. It's raw, it's real. Let's get started. Hey, Destination Remarkable. I am going to dig into this new journey that I'm on today, all about the book that I'm working on. Holy moly. Let me tell you this book story. In 2020, when COVID hit and all the yada yada, we lost 60% of our business, and it was a really hard time for me. In fact, if you go to my LinkedIn profile, I've got a 17-minute video on there. I did not a TEDx event, but a TEDx style event. I'm really pleased with the production that day. It was a leadership development conference, and I loved presenting. So I have a 17-minute keynote that talks about that journey and what happened. I would encourage you to go watch it. I will not make you relive it here for those of you who have seen it. But that time was really hard for me, and we lost 60% of our business, and we had an opportunity to reinvent ourselves. Up until that point, we were predominantly known as Sales BQ, as our sales development and building out sales departments and doing sales training and consulting and sales recruiting, all sales. But we were just early on that journey of exploring what it looked like to be holistic revenue leaders and getting into branding and marketing and revenue operations, customer success, all of that, in addition to sales. So during that time, when we had an opportunity to rebuild, it was great for me because I was centered, very, very centered in my faith. The shutdown, the loss of revenue, the loss of a team member, like the whole thing really jolted me. And I think what was so difficult was I became grounded. So I, up until that point, was on a plane like every week. I was just traveling everywhere for speaking engagements, for servicing clients. I was everywhere. So for me to actually be home, because when I wasn't traveling, I had this old school mentality of that CEO was the first one in, the last one out. I mean, I was leaving to get to the office at like 5:45 in the morning, and I was there by 6:15 and unlocking the door, turning on the lights, making the pot of coffee. Like that was me. And I was the one who shut it down at night. So here's my gracious husband raising our son and running the household. And then when I wasn't working those crazy hours in the office 5 days a week, I was traveling. And so I just wasn't present, and I was always on the go, and I was working 100-hour work weeks, and I just wasn't present at all at home. It was such a hard time. But when we were given the opportunity to rebuild, AKA COVID shutdown against our will, I'm so grateful for that experience. And during that time, I became so centered back in my faith, as I had a lot of extra time on my hands. We lost a lot of clients and I couldn't leave my house, so I had a lot of extra time. In fact, I slept for what felt like months. I was run so ragged, and my poor body was just exhausted and depleted. And so I took months of actually sleeping and not getting up at 4:30, 4:45 in the morning and 7 days a week and staying up till 10, 11 o'clock at night. It was amazing to heal. But I also spent a lot of time in the Word and really dug into sermons at my church. And one of the sermons was about building your house on the rock, and centered around Matthew, talking just people who build their house, their life on the rock. It can withstand any storm, but those who build it on the sand, that storm comes through, it's going to wipe it out. And I think the mentality that I had when COVID first hit was, oh my gosh, we built our house on the sand and it's all gone. Well, that was the emotional reaction that first set in when it happened. I realized we only lost about 60% of it, which means we were left with almost half. That's the glass half full mentality. And when I looked at what was left, it really was built on a good, firm foundation. And I could feel the Lord saying, hey, this time with me, let's rebuild this together. You kind of took this company and this idea that I gifted you, and you went 100 miles an hour down a completely other path. And so I was like, okay, let's rebuild it. So 2020 ended up being one of the greatest years we've ever had as a company. And for me personally, restored my marriage, built a relationship with my son for the first time, really embraced motherhood. Motherhood was not natural for me. And so it was a great year. But during that time, I got to be on a really awesome, well-known sales podcast. And The person who runs that podcast is a very, very famous sales author. And he has published some of the best pieces that are out in this category. And I had a great run with him on that podcast. And afterward, he and his wife were like, hey, we should maybe look at helping you get a book out. And I was like, well, I've self-published before. I've written a few things. And they're like, no, like real deal. We'll coach you on the process. We'll help build this unbelievable how-to sales book. And then we'll get you in front of our publisher. And I thought long and hard about it because there was an expense associated to it because I would be contracting them for their time, but I knew they were worth it. And I thought, gosh, we just recovered financially. Am I really going to do this? And I said, yeah, you know what? I'm going to do it because I can see potentially one day, I can see myself as an author again and getting back into writing. I think that I have a lot to share that would be of value to a certain audience. So I embarked on the journey with them. And it was really neat to be able to build a book plan, map it out, and then have those weekends I'd lock myself up in a room and just type. And it was a little eye-opening, though, because this was my first experience working with somebody who sees the world differently at this intimate of a level. So I'm very passionate about my story because it's mine. I also don't believe that my sales performance and the success that I had in my 20s is separate from the story of my life and who I am and my DNA and how I was raised and why I am the way that I am. I do believe that the sales performance that I had in all of those results was because of who I am. Obviously, I'm the one who did it. With that, the way that they wanted the story built, it was I am struggling to come up with the words and be kind here. It just wasn't me. Let's just say that. The tone in the book was a very aggressive, bullish, strong-worded Mary. And I'm really not that person. And some people have read that manuscript who know me and they're like, ooh, it's a little bit of a mismatch. But they wanted this badass tone. Like, I'm going to tell you how to be a number one sales rep. Like, it was so in your face and it's really not who I am. So, I can get passionate. Don't get me wrong. I can get passionate when I talk, but it was a little off. So anywho, I go through all the work to build this manuscript, work with their team. I had an interior book designer, paid for him. He was amazing. And then we took it to that first publisher. And they wanted to see a version that completely stripped out my entire personal story. And really what it just came to was a step-by-step how to be a number one sales rep, which fine, that probably will benefit somebody who wants to be a number one sales rep. But God didn't create me to teach people how to be number one salespeople. Maybe for a little point of my career, that was the focus. But He created me as a servant and a steward, and he put me in the marketplace with all these crazy talents. Great. But what do I do with them? If I just sit here and train people on how to be a top salesperson, okay. So it gives them a competitive edge for what? For their personal agenda so they can make some more money? Cool. They can get a crystal and an award? Cool. Move up in their career one day? Cool. But how does that benefit humanity? Like, I was created to benefit humanity. I am a child of God, and I am his servant, and I have surrendered to him, and I live for him. So this was majorly in conflict for me. I'm like, I can't publish this book if I'm going to just be telling this story, because I got to tell you this background. As a number one salesperson, let me tell you who I was. I was a monster. I was competitive. I partied hard. I did things I'm not proud of. I was a liar. I was mean. I gossiped. I talked behind people's backs. I did whatever was needed, ethical or not ethical, to win or succeed. I'm painting myself to sound like an awful person. Look, for the most part, I was 80% good, like good-hearted. But there was this 20% of me that had that wicked demon who would win at all costs. Why? Because I was a broken, unhealed child, still trying to figure out if I could ever be good enough for anyone or anything. I had no self-worth. I was empty and dead on the inside. And so it was a drug. Success was a drug for me. Winning was a drug. And you know people who are addicted to drugs. Sometimes they do things they're not proud of in order to get the hit and to get the high. And that was success for me. So I was 80% good. Wasn't all rotten, but I was 20% rotten. And I was supposed to publish a book. to get other people to be like that? I was like, wait, this isn't the inspirational message I want to be giving. This isn't my life's work. That's not my legacy. So I had this change of heart and I decided not to publish. And I sat on that manuscript and I told a lot of people, I built up a really good story on social media and they're like, when's the book coming out? When's the book coming out? I'm like, okay, well, God has a great plan. I had an outreach from Forbes. I got an email one day. Hey, we found you. We like your work. We'd like to interview you and see if you're qualified and interested in being published under Forbes books. And I was like, what is this? So I jumped on a call and did an initial interview screen, and they told me about this long drawn out process. And then you write this thing and they may or may not take it. And I was like, well, I already have a manuscript. And they're like, you do? Oh, well, that's different. So I went and spoke with another contact there, and she's amazing. She heard the story and she heard more of my background. And she's like, oh yeah, I need to put you in front of that panel like right away. So we did a little write up on it, and 4 out of 4 unanimous, like we're publishing this woman. And I made sure to say to my contact, you do realize that I am a Christian woman. I am not posting or publishing this book from a marketplace perspective. Like, I'm going to tell the real story and the whole story. And she's like, and that's exactly why we want to publish you. I'm like, holy smokes, are you serious? So everything changed, a completely different experience. The team I'm working with is unreal. I have the best writing team. My ghostwriter, Alec, oh man, he's incredible. He loves my story. He's passionate about it. We spend a lot of time together in interview, and he is capturing it perfectly. He has my voice. It is 100% me, and I love working with him. So here's what we decided to do. The book is Destination Remarkable, also the name of this podcast, and more so of my personal brand, which is an adaptation of Do Remarkable Work. I really like that word, remarkable, if you haven't figured that out yet. Anywho, so the plan is to work with this team over the next 6 months or so. We should have a book published early 2023. I just don't know the timing yet. It will have international distribution. We'll be in Hudson News airports as well. And I'm so thrilled and honored to be published on, gosh, guys, it's Forbes. It's under such a prestigious, credible brand. And I love everything that Forbes puts out. They really are for the entrepreneur. And I know that they don't put out bad pieces. So it is a privilege and it's an honor to be publishing underneath them. On that note, as I go on this journey, I would love your help because I have been very anti-social media for a long time, except for LinkedIn. At one point, I had hundreds and hundreds of followers on Instagram. And then I had, with my meltdown, I decided I wanted to crawl in a hole and I didn't want anybody to know who I was. So I deleted all the followers. I turned my account private. Bummer. So I could use your help. I could use your help with a like and a follow and a share and whatnot, because I believe that there is a huge message that God is expecting to share through me. And I am honored to have the opportunity to do this. So anything that you can help me do, build that following would be great. LinkedIn, I've got about 21,000 followers. They're pretty amazing. So I love them. And I love LinkedIn, even though it's kind of turning into a soap drama platform, but that's okay. There's still some good stuff on there. And ultimately there's some really great connections. So thank you for being along with me on the journey. The first Forbes book is going to be my life story. It's going to be from the very beginning to today, and to the last minute of when we decide to stop writing about my life. And you are going to have a glimpse into every twist and turn, every crazy thing that I have lived through and been able to overcome. It'll share in depth about the hardship, but also the testimony and how my life has changed, especially as a CEO and entrepreneur and a businesswoman, a wife and a mom, all of these components who honors the Lord in everything that I do and gives God the glory. So it's interesting because that's not really widely accepted. Anywho, that's what's going to be published. Second book will be more about my revenue scaling playbook, all things revenue. I don't know what that's going to be yet, please. That's way next year. I got to focus on right now, ton on my plate, but stay tuned. Go give it a like or a follow. I really genuinely appreciate you doing that, because the more people who know about this, the more book sales, the more lives that are impacted. And that is turning into my mission. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in connecting with me, you can find me, Mary Grothe, spelled Grothe, on LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, or Instagram.